Greetings, barbecue family. Welcome to another live episode of the Backyard SmokeMaster Barbecue Podcast. I'm your host, Kenyatta Robinson. Excuse me. Thank you all. Happy 4th of July, and thank you all for tuning in, taking a little time from this holiday to hang out with us for what I consider to be the best hour of the week. It's the hour in which I get to talk about barbecue with you all. And of course, I have to invite you all to please leave your comments, ask questions, be an active participant because your comments are the engine that really makes this show go. I say that every week, and it is absolutely 100% true. And also, please take a moment to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so that you know every time that we're about to go live or when I drop a new video. Definitely don't want you to miss out on anything. And if you are listening on a replay, your favorite podcast player, please leave a comment and leave a review for the podcast. That will really help us out. So today, I think this topic is apropos. Is that how you say it? Is pretty much, you know, in line with today's activities. Hopefully, you got out there and did some barbecuing either today or maybe yesterday. Me personally, I did most of my barbecuing. I did yesterday. I did pulled pork. So basically, that is, doing like a pork shoulder or pork butt. And it was on my Lone Star Grill's offset smoker. Basically, it took me about 10 hours to get that butt up to 203 internal, and then I let it rest for another couple of hours. So that's always my favorite thing to do when I have the time is to get on my offset smoker and smoke a large cut of meat like pork butt or brisket. I know it's going to take most of the day, and that really, it does something. It kind of feeds my soul, to be able to spend that amount of time out there on my pit. And when you have a big cut of meat like that, or if you're cooking a lot of stuff, maybe you did for today's holiday. The natural question is because, we all end up cooking more food. What do we do with those leftovers? We don't want to just, toss it or just, sit there and look at it in the fridge and watch it kind of grow old, grow sick. We want to be able to, you know, come up with some new and exciting ideas to take those leftovers and repurpose it, so to speak, into some delicious food. So, first I'm going to ask, did you barbecue today or yesterday, or are you planning to barbecue over the weekend? And if so, let us know in the comments, what you are barbecuing or what you're most looking forward to. And then hopefully today you'll get some ideas on what to do with those leftovers. So another just a administrative note. So my daughter Erin is home from school for the summer, and she is co-producing today's episode. This is kind of like a first run for her, and it's a little different for me as well. So I'm gonna, say give us some grace, if we do into some technical issues, because there are some things that we didn't quite fully weren't able to fully work out. So I think it'll be an experience for both of us in terms of, going from one topic to the next, pulling up comments, so on and so forth. So give us some grace. All right, but before we jump into today's topic, I always like to say hello to the folks who are watching us live. So let's see if we have any comments. So I don't know, Aaron, if you can pull up comments. Somehow I'm already having issues in that I'm not really seeing them on my end. So actually, I don't know if that's just a technical snafu for me or if We just don't have any comments. Let me see. Let me see if on the fly, if I can figure out what's going on because I am not seeing comments. So maybe, let me see. Sorry, guys. We're starting off with technical issues right off the bat because I don't see any of the comments. So let me see what I can come up with here. All right. Bear with me, guys. Bear with me. Trying to see if there's a way for me to see what we got. Okay. Huh. Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe we're not going to be able to get to the comments, or maybe that'll come up a little bit because, like I said, I'm just not seeing them over on my end. So I think we're just gonna okay, I do see one, and I think it for me, it's gonna be a little bit of a delay. The only way that I'm seeing these comments is by actually looking at the stream itself over on YouTube, and I think there's like a 20-second delay. Okay, but Mike said happy 4th, and then Jeff said happy 4th, and he just did something. Okay, wait a minute. Uh, all right, let's see if we can get that better. Okay. All right. Let me quit. Halo Master says, so I'm going with scraps to make soup, stew, stock. All right, that sounds pretty good. Okay, so let's move on, and we'll see if we can get the comments coming in a little bit smoother. We're gonna start off though. So again, kind of redoing this. We're talking about how to turn leftover barbecue into new mouth-watering meals. Okay, we don't want to let that good cue go to waste. So, first up, we're going to talk about what to do with all of that brisket. So, let me pull that up. So, with brisket, you have some things that people often do will be like brisket tacos or quesadillas. If you're doing mac and cheese, you can incorporate brisket into that. But I'm going to talk about and give you guys a recipe for brisket hash. Maybe that's something that you haven't tried. Brisket hash, and it's not just for breakfast. It's something that you can make. It can be a killer late night snack, or you can even have it for dinner. So I mean, it's a great way to repurpose your brisket. So we're going to give you some steps here. Okay. So number one, pre-cook your potatoes. If your potatoes are raw, I mean, if you already got some cooked potatoes, then you don't have to deal with this step. You basically boil your diced potatoes for 5 to 7 minutes until tender, and then drain. Okay. Number two, saute the veggies. Heat the oil or butter in a large skillet over medium heat, and then add your onions or bell peppers. Cook 3 to 4 minutes until soft. And I know I'm going through these maybe a little bit fast. So if this is a recipe that you would like to get in writing, you should see at the bottom of the screen that scrolling note. It says send a note to Kenyatta at backyardsmokemaster.com if you want one of these recipes, and we will get that to you. All right, next up, add potatoes and brisket. So So toss in your potato, season with salt and pepper, and smoked paprika. Cook for 5 minutes till the potatoes crisp up. Okay, this is pretty simple. Not a whole lot of steps. Next up, we're gonna add our chopped brisket. Stir to combine and cook for another 5 minutes until everything is heated through. All right. And now here's the optional part, but I think this really takes it to the next level. And we're talking hash. If you're gonna have hash, I think you need to include some eggs. But again, this is optional. Fry or poach a couple of eggs and serve them on top of the hash, and then you're good to go. You're good to go. All right. So let me know. I know we're having some trouble with the comment, but definitely I would like to know, if you guys, what are you doing with your brisket? Okay, let me know about that. All right. So next up, I want to talk about. Um, we're going to talk about some pulled pork ideas. So the obvious choices would be to do things like pulled pork sliders. You could do a barbecue pork pizza. But have you thought about doing barbecue pork fried rice? Think about this. Your pulled pork, so you're going to get the smokiness of your pulled pork, and that's going to add a whole new depth to your classic fried rice. Plus, you can spice it up, sweeten it up with whatever your favorite barbecue sauce is right at the end. All right. So, okay, let me go back into the comments though before we go through all of these steps. So let's see if we can get some comments on here. And I think I'm gonna have to kind of stall a little bit because again, there is a delay, but I really don't want to miss what you guys are saying out in the chat. Okay, so let me see. I know that we got a greetings from correctional officer for lockdown. So thank you, Bruce, for tuning in. So I'm not seeing the comment, but I'm just going to read what I see over here. And you said, "Yep, I had an awesome cook today. I used your favorite wood too. He used heat and hickory wood, and my ribs turned out great. I had an awesome glaze from a prep that my wife made." All right, Bruce. Well, that sounds awesome, and kudos to you for using the mesquite wood. I think that is awesome, and we've talked about this before. I feel like you really have to be pretty careful when you're cooking with mesquite because that is one of the more powerful woods, and it's really easy to overpower your meat. So, kudos to you for that. Now, Jeff said, "I've got some flank style ribs planned for the weekend, a quick, direct cook." Now that sounds great. Now, yeah, with your flank style ribs, so that's going to be a thin rib cut. And as Jeff alludes to, I mean, that's going to be perfect, for doing it direct heat style. And that's something that I'm looking to get more experience under my belt doing some direct heat grilling. I feel like I've really been doing a lot of smoking of meat, but not much direct heat. And that's going to be something I think for the balance of 25, it's going to be one of my big goals. Is to get more cooks like that under my belt. All right, Bruce then said with regard to mesquite, it has to be used carefully because it definitely has a strong kick. Yeah, absolutely. Try not to use too much. Um, too much, maybe like a fistful, if you're using wood chunks, like make a fistful about all you need. You don't wanna do much more than that. Okay, so and then Jeff said, yeah, flanking style ribs. Blaming the autocorrect. That's all right, Jeff. We're having some technical problems on this end too. Sometimes all this available tech and AI and all this stuff that's supposed to make it easier sometimes makes it a little tougher. Bruce then said, with leftovers, I wonder if a griddle would work good for them. Stir fry rice and leftover dishes, etc. Absolutely. Absolutely 1000%. I can agree and co-sign that a griddle, the flat top griddle, that Blackstone, of course, is the name that comes to mind, is an absolute perfect tool, for using for cooking your leftover food. Yeah, stir fry rice. I mean, you can basically do just about anything on a flat top. I love it for breakfast type foods like that brisket hash that we talked about. That would go great. Um, but yeah, and what's really cool about using a griddle, kind of similar to a gas oven. Most of them are gonna have think of it as like four zones, four knobs, four knobs where you can dial up or dial down your temperature. And basically it makes it so that you can essentially have up to four different cooking zones. And for the most part, it's usually going to be two zones, the way it usually ends up being, even though there are the four knobs. But for the most part, you're gonna have like a cool zone and a hot zone. And again, that goes perfectly, um, with this type of like repurposing because you can take your pre-cooked meat, maybe have it on the cool zone while you're doing your eggs, doing that rice, getting it cooked up and prepared. That's on more of your hotter zone. And then when you're ready, you can add your meats, so on and so forth. So yeah, absolutely. Um, a flat top is a great tool. Now here's an idea for brisket from Jeff. He says that brisket is a good base for shepherd's pie, cottage pie. I'm not sure. I've heard of shepherd's pie. I'm not familiar with the cottage pie, but maybe, I mean, I'm sure that's a thing. Um, Chop it up, add some chopped carrots or other veggies and some tomato paste, a little beef stock, topped with mashed potatoes. Now you're really talking. Absolutely. So that sounds good. And then Bruce says, Jeff, great point. Yeah, shepherd's pie is great. All right. Yeah, keep them coming. Keep them coming, guys. All right. So let's get back into the pulled pork ideas. So again, you can do pulled pork sliders. You could do barbecue pork pizza. I'm going to give you a recipe for barbecue pork fried rice. So step one, you're going to prep your rice. And this goes for any time you're doing any type of fried rice. Cold leftover rice is going to work best. So, if you do like just do some white rice maybe the night before, stick it in the fridge, leave it overnight until you're ready to do your fried rice. That will work best. So that's like a pro tip, and that works best because it doesn't clump. Okay. Next up, I'm picturing, yeah, you can scramble the eggs. I'm picturing that flat top, but yeah, heat a large skillet or water over medium high heat, or if you're cooking on that flat top, you can do, like I said, create your hot zone, medium high heat, and scramble your eggs on that flat top, and get one of those infrared thermometers. It kind of, kind of like a little GUN on YouTube. I don't want to get flagged for saying the word, but yeah, little GUN infrared, aim it, at the surface of the flat top, and it'll give you a quick reading that'll let you know approximately what that temperature is on the surface of the flat top. All right. Next, add a little oil, pour in the beaten eggs, and scramble until just set. Remove from the pan and set aside. And you can set it aside. And again, I'm kind of envisioning with the flat top, you'd move it into the cool side, your cool zone, if you're cooking on a flat top. Next, number three, saute the veggies and pork. Add more oil if necessary. Toss in things like garlic, peas, carrots, and green onions. Cook for 2 to 3 minutes. Next, we're going to add our pulled pork that we already prepared. Stir and let it heat thoroughly for another, or let it heat through for another 2 to 3 minutes. And then fry the rice. So now we're going to add the rice, breaking up any clumps, stir fry for 3 to 4 minutes, letting the rice crisp up slightly. Drizzle some soy sauce and sesame oil, tossing everything to coat. And last step, plate it, serve it, plate it, garnish with green onion, or here's another idea, or a drizzle of sriracha for some heat. All right, let's get back into the comments. Let me get that over here. Hold on. See what you guys are talking about in the comments. All right. Oh, Mike says carnitas is great with leftover pulled pork. So many great ideas, that you can do with. I mean, I think pulled pork really, really versatile, and yeah, you can do so many things with it. I like, I especially like on day one. I really do enjoy eating it just straight. But then, we do a lot of repurposing after the fact. Okay, Jeff says pulled pork is great for barbecue pizza. Chop it up, add a little barbecue sauce of your choice on your favorite pizza dough, add some cheese and any other favorite toppings. Yeah, that's a good, that's gonna be a good, pretty quick cook as well. And absolutely, pulled pork is a great thing to put on barbecue pizza. Um, I haven't tried it. And I do remember. I remember hearing Malcolm Reed, How to Barbecue Right, and I think this is something that's popular in his neck of the woods. I know he's in Mississippi, but not too far from Memphis, and he talks a lot about doing like a barbecue pulled pork spaghetti. And I would, I haven't gotten around to trying that, but that's another pretty good idea. All right. So, couple more things. So, chicken and sausage, um, you can easily repurpose those meats as well. So you could do things like a smoked chicken salad. You could do barbecue sausage pasta. You could do loaded nachos with your leftover chicken. And not just chicken, but you could do loaded nachos with any stuff that we talked about already. It could be your brisket, it could be your pulled pork. You could, so many different things you could do creating your loaded nachos. Okay. Now, maybe even after all of that, you're still trying to figure out, maybe you still have some leftover meat, and you don't want to give it all away. Maybe you just want to keep some, or maybe you're just tired of eating pulled pork, or tired of eating brisket, and you need ideas. What are the best ways to store and reheat your leftovers? So, leftover barbecue deserve just as much love as the fresh off the pit stuff, right? So you want to take a couple of extra minutes to store it right, and you know, 2 months down the line or so, if you're not in the mood to cook something fresh, you've got some great barbecue that you properly stored. It's not going to be dried out, so no dried out brisket, no wasted ribs. Going to give you some ideas on how to best preserve your meat over the long haul. So we're going to start off with vacuum sealing. So if you don't have a vacuum sealer by now, I definitely wholeheartedly recommend that you buy a vacuum sealer. And these are best for your long-term preservation of meat. Why it works: when you vacuum seal, it removes air, which prevents moisture loss and freezer burn. Matter of fact, if you've got some meat in your freezer and you can see that there's freezer burn, or you see those ice crystals underneath the packaging, you should just go ahead and toss it. But yeah, if you do vacuum sealing, this is a great way to make sure that you're not experiencing any of that. It's perfect for brisket, pulled pork, ribs, sausage, especially if you're freezing those leftovers. Here's a bonus tip: add a little bit of the leftover dripping before sealing. This will give you some extra moisture and help make it even, it'll help the tenderness when it is time for you to eat. So, number two, and again, I highly recommend the vacuum sealer approach. But here's another one: use an airtight container with a little bit of liquid. So this is a fridge-friendly method of preserving your leftovers. So your trapped moisture helps keep your barbecue juicy. Adding some broth, a splash even of apple juice or drippings from that meat, that helps keep the meat from drying out. Perfect for short-term fridge storage, up to 3 to 4 days for brisket slices, pulled pork, chicken, so on and so forth. And here's a bonus tip: store your portions in meal-sized containers so you only open what you need. And I'm guilty of this. Too often, when I'm putting stuff in my refrigerator, my leftovers, I'll just get like a big Ziploc bag and just stuff it all in there, and just, you know, move on. But it would definitely be more prudent to get some meal-sized containers and just, portion it out. And that way, when you do go to reheat, again, you're only going to be cooking what you need while continuing to preserve the others, the other food. All right. Tip number three: double wrapping with foil and plastic wrap. And this is an old school pitmaster trick. Why it works: aluminum foil locks in the moisture, while the plastic wrap helps to keep the air out. So this combo is great for smoked meats that you store in the fridge or freezer. Perfect for ribs, large chunks of brisket, pulled pork. Bonus tip: wrap wrap it as tight as you can, and if freezing, add the wrapped meat to a freezer-safe bag for even more protection. I think that'll help prevent some of that freezer burn that we talked about. All right, back into the comments. See what else you guys are suggesting. Jeff says smoked chicken Alfredo can be quick. Use a use a jarred sauce and jazz it up with some fresh Parmesan, garlic, mozzarella. Uh, Use it with your favorite pasta, some great leftovers. So now you're talking my daughter's love language when it comes to food. Aaron has always loved pasta. Um, Alfredo is definitely one of the favorites. So I know, again, she's co-producing, and I imagine she probably perked up a little bit, at that one. So that's a great suggestion. And then Bruce, correctional officer, says leftovers can be used for some chili too. Beans, add add beans with them for a stew too. Yeah, that's another great suggestion. Um, I think of it as kind of like a leveled up a leveled up chili. And you can do so many things with chili. Um, Brisket, pulled pork, even chicken, all of it can be made into a chili. And I think absolutely. I mean, if you're doing chili anyway, it should be your grill. Your smoker should be part of the process. So that's another absolutely fantastic suggestion. Definitely appreciate that. All right, guys. So let me know before we get out of here if you guys have any other comments, but also I'm going to try and build in a little bit of time to see if there are any questions that you guys might have. And again, it doesn't just have to be, about tonight's topic. We're open and ready to talk about anything barbecue related. So if you do have any burning questions that you wanted to ask, as I always say, I'll try my best to get you an answer. And if I can't, I'm confident that someone who's watching, what we always find is somebody watching, usually helps to point us in the right direction. So let me know. Let me know. But if not, again, I know it's a holiday, so I know you all hopefully had a fantastic day, with friends, family, loved ones, and I do appreciate you taking a little bit of time to come out and hang out with me as we talk about barbecue. All right, so if we don't have any other questions or comments, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. But let me just say, we will be back next week, so please tune in. And let me get that up on. Let's see what you think. Jeff is asking, how does everyone like their grilled hot dogs? A little char or no char? And Jeff says, I'm char all the way. That's a great question. And I don't know that we've ever talked about hot dogs on the podcast. And I feel like this could be a controversial question because I think it's probably 50-50 on that. when I'm thinking about my own household, for me, I like a little bit of char, not too much char. I don't want it to be looking almost burned. Now, my wife, Janine, on the other hand, oh man, you can't get it charred enough for her. So when I haven't done hot dogs in a minute, but I'm thinking, whenever I do hot dogs, definitely have to leave it on the grill a little bit for Janine. She wants it super charred. So Jeff says he's char all the way. So Jeff, are we talking, like a little char right down the middle? Or are we talking about like char just about all over where that thing, you can't even see any red on that hot dog anymore? How much are we talking about? Now, correctional officer said, yeah, a little char is good for me. No ketchup, of course. For me, that one, the condiment, um, I'm not as much of a ketchup person anymore with my hot dogs. For me, it's usually mustard and relish. I definitely like having some relish on there. So, okay. And then let's see. Bruce says that his wife has to have his has to have her hot dogs burnt char. Okay, so your wife is in the same camp as Janine. They want it, they want it burned, which I don't know. I just don't get. Not only is it too much char, but I mean, man, you're cooking the juices and the flavor out of that thing. So I don't know. Little strange, but to each their own. And what I do like about, with the hot dogs is that it's pretty easy to get them customized to everyone's satisfaction. All right, guys. So again, appreciate all for tuning in. So again, another reminder, um, we'll be back next week. It hash and the barbecue pork fried rice. Just shoot me a note and we'll get that to you as quickly as we can. Jeff says he likes it with mustard, onion, occasionally relish. Yeah, onion good too. I don't usually don't have my onion chopped and prepared. I kind of forget about the onion when I'm doing hot dogs. Usually for me, it's just throw those dogs on the grill and okay. Now Jeff said interesting audio works with comments, but not the title card showing the next show. Oh, oh my goodness. Okay, so Aaron, on your end, I think if you see audio, I think you would just need to make sure to uncheck mute for the guest interview guest. But wait a minute, let me. All right, thank you, Jeff. I can always count on Jeff. Thank you so much for letting me know what in the world is going on. So again, okay, so Jeff said interesting that the audio was only working with the comments, but not on the title card showing the next show. And again, we're kind of dealing with the delay. All this stuff. Okay, so anyway, I guess you saw it on the screen. Next Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central, 10 Eastern. And I think with that, we are going to get out of here before something else crazy happens. All right. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. You bet.